Ladies and gentlemen, tonight's spotlight shines on the rising stars of the legal world, where young firms, bold ideas, and smarter systems take center stage. Standing tall at the intersection of law and leadership, he's the digital strategist, the legal growth architect, the man with the mic. Make some noise for your host, Will McCreight. And today's guest, proof that modern law isn't about working more. It's about working smarter. Welcome, Jonathan Hawkins. The game is changing. Let's get you in it. This is Legal Currents with Will McCreight.
Welcome back to another episode of the Legal Currents podcast, built to help small firms and growing law firms scale smarter using their time and resources more effectively. Today, I am joined by a very special guest, someone who has built a career out of guiding firms from the inside out. Jonathan Hawkins, founding attorney of law firm GC, serving as outside general counsel specifically for law firms, help them navigate in governance the ethics and partners, or navigate everything from governance and ethics to partnership disputes, growth strategies. Also the host of the Founding Partner podcast, which is a fantastic podcast I've been listening to over the past couple of days. A lot of great guests, a lot of great experience, especially for listeners here. Also in the process of writing a new book, which we'll talk about. But perhaps most importantly, just checked off a bucket list item of mine when he recently stormed the field at Bobby Dodd Stadium. A bucket list item for anybody who's a sports fan. Jonathan, welcome to the Legal Currents podcast. Really excited for the conversation.
Will, thanks for having me. This is going to be fun. We spoke right before. We met, I guess, about a year ago at the GLM conference, so it's good to catch up.
Yeah, fantastic. Now, Jonathan, Ron Latz actually introduced the both of us, and shout out to Ron, a previous guest on the podcast here, and someone I really, like and admire in the space. And upon doing a little bit of research and digging into some of the things that you've done in the past, I know exactly why that is, and I think you're going to be a fantastic guest here. But I guess why don't we start things off and tell our audience a little bit about your background and kind of who you are.
Sure. So I am the founder of Law Firm GC. We are a boutique law firm that represents lawyers and law firms, soup to nuts. So what does that mean? So from forming a firm to dissolving a firm and everything in between. So if you're forming a partnership, we can help you there. If you're breaking apart or merging or buying or selling a law firm, we even help some estates and lawyers shut down their law firms. We, I guess about a year ago, we added a legal malpractice defense capability, bar grievance defense as well. So pretty much anything that can come up in the operation of a law firm legally, we can help with that. We're based in Atlanta, but we've got licenses throughout the country, and we're collecting more, and we have plans eventually to open some beachhead offices in other states, but that's a little bit down the road.
Love it. And so particularly for our audience, you have seen a lot of things. You've had a lot of different conversations, and I know it's a recurring topic of the Founding Partners podcast. And so the first question that I wanted to start with is, with all these conversations that you've had and even just your experience serving as that outside general counsel, what are some of the most common blind spots that you see in smaller growing firms when it comes to, everything about that process?
It's interesting. There are a lot. And, I'm very fortunate in the space we occupy that I get to see a lot of different firms of a lot of different sizes, from, brand new one attorney to, 100 plus attorneys with multi-state locations, et cetera. And so, different firms have different issues that come up at different stages along the way of their growth. But there are a lot of common things that come up. But one interesting one that, I'm not surprised by it anymore, but I tell people this, and they always seem shocked that how many law firm partnerships are out there operating without a partnership agreement. It's way more common than you think. We draft those. It's funny. Sometimes we draft them for firms, and I check back 2-3 years later, and they still haven't signed it. So eventually, effectively they don't have a partnership agreement. And so that's sort of a surprising thing to a lot of people. And it's one of the lowest hanging fruits, I think, out there for anybody that's got a partner. You've got to have a written partnership agreement because, I call them prenups for law firms. You hope nothing ever goes wrong, but you just never know what might happen. And you're going to want that in place just in case. Some other areas, I think written agreements with all your attorneys and your staff are worthwhile to get. Most firms don't do that, but I see it more and more are doing that. That's another, I'd say, low-hanging fruit that firms can do.
Yeah, come on, attorneys of all people to not sign the partnership agreements. That is absolutely low hanging fruit, and that's fantastic insight, right? It's, especially a lot of our audience is going to be in those earlier stages, and hopefully not applicable to them. But if it is still applicable, definitely reach out to Jonathan there. Another thing that I have found really interesting is the content and the things that you discuss on the Founding Partner podcast. And I'm curious to get your perspective, talking to so many firm leaders and having all those conversations. What are some of the things that you've seen, and how have those conversations really shaped your perspective on what it takes to be successful as a law firm founder in those early stages? Are there any common traits or similarities that you see?
There are. And one of the reasons I started that podcast was I wanted the ability to ask a lot of founders at different stages along their journeys, ask them lots of questions, figure out what things they did and maybe some mistakes they made. And really it was for me, because we're growing our firm, we're trying to grow. So I wanted to learn from them. And I figured, why not make it a podcast and put it out there and let other people learn too. And so I've interviewed people from, again, all types of firms, plaintiff side, defense side, family law, criminal law, insurance defense, trust and estates, everything you can imagine. And, the firms that I think the ones that grow, they're willing to take risks, calculated risks. You can't be crazy. But they also learn from their mistakes, and they learn from others. A common theme is, coaches, consultants, masterminds. That is a common theme. Another common theme, it's interesting, as firms grow, early on, it's all about getting clients. Then you reach a stage where it's about the operations on the inside and how you service the clients. And really the thread that runs through all of that is the culture that you build at your firm. And then really that falls back to, it's all about the people. It's all about your people internally, is a common theme I hear a lot.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear you say that, especially the idea of taking calculated risk, right? Which I think has definitely been a recurring commonality in the conversations that I've had in our episodes thus far, right? That risk and taking calculated risk is important. It's interesting to hear that from someone in your position, however. And so can you talk to me a little bit about the balance of taking these calculated risks and identifying these calculated risks while also maintaining the almost stability and kind of health of the firm internally to make sure that you are set up for success if these risks don't pan out?
And so I speak a little bit from personal experience as well. The thing about taking risks, lawyers, it's been beat out of us. We are risk avoidant. It's our job to point out the risks for our clients, to help them avoid them or minimize them. And so it's beat into us from law school. So a lot of lawyers are very risk averse. But those that want to grow their firm, I think you have to take risks, and you have to make a decision that you're willing to take some risks. Now, don't go out and bet the farm and all these things on some crazy new initiative. I would say, do a little. You've got to make a decision. You've got to put yourself out there. But if you don't take a risk, you're never going to grow. And so again, it's about managing it. So if it doesn't work out, and I don't really think of them as failures, but learning experiences, and you're going to make them. You're going to learn a lot. So just make sure if you're going to do it, you're not going to lose everything on that bet.
Yeah, calculated, right? Key
Yes.
emphasis on calculated. It's something that I draw a lot of parallels to in the digital world. And, speaking with firms, one thing that I've become very familiar with is firms who speak with, if you speak to 15 different digital agencies, you'll probably get 15 different variations of a strategy. And so if you're sitting around waiting for that perfect answer that everybody is in total agreement with, you're not necessarily gonna ever get that, right? And so it's taking the risk with who you feel the most confident in. But you mentioned one thing on the personal experiences. I'd be curious to hear a little bit from you about a risk that you took or maybe are currently taking, with your firm, that has either panned out or maybe didn't pan out.
Well, I think probably the first risk that every law firm owner will take is that first hire. And it's a struggle for a lot of people. They always view it as a cost, and they're scared to actually do it because they think they're taking on some gigantic salary or whatever. And then all of a sudden they're responsible for two people, not just one. And so I think we've all gone through that. And so I'd say, for me, the bigger risks so far have been the hiring. And then you find out, wait a second, this person's here. I can give them work and now I can do more. And it usually results in higher revenue. And then again, when you think you're biting off a 80,000, 100,000, whatever a year salary, you're really not. It's, $8,000 a month or $5,000 a month. If worst case scenario doesn't work out, you can, let the person go and go back and rebuild and come out another day if you need to. So, again, I think a lot of it, the other thing I see a lot in law firm owners and lawyers, it's the mindset shift from costs to investments. And so again, that first hire, a lot of folks view that as a cost. I think if you reframe it as an investment, it can really change the trajectory of your practice and your firm.
That's a great example of just a word, right? How that word can kind of change the shift of a mindset. Something that we talk about very frequently on here is, you really have two major buckets of resources, right? Everybody thinks about your money, but the one less thought about is the time, right? And the value of bringing on additional team members to support your ability to use your time more effectively. And that's a great point there. Now, something I read while we're kind of speaking on like experiences is that between undergrad and law school, you lived in Costa Rica and then you moved to Colorado to work and learn to snowboard. And I want to hear a little bit more about that and kind of in that sense, how those sort of in between experiences maybe led to a change or influence the way you think about risk, structure, firm culture, and maybe some of those outside of the workplace experiences shaping kind of the person that you are or the firm that you're looking to create.
My trip to Costa Rica was really a turning point in my life. So I graduated college. We were on the quarter systems, and I graduated in March of, I guess, 99. And a friend of mine and it was an engineering school. We did not have to take a foreign language undergrad. So I didn't know any language. Foreign language. And we said, hey, why don't we go move down to Costa Rica and learn Spanish? And we're going to go down there together. He was also going to Navy flight school, but was not supposed to report until the following January. But all of a sudden they said, you know what? We want you here in June. So he's like, sorry, Jonathan, I can't go with you. Sorry about that. And took me a couple of days and I said, well, I'm going anyway. So I went down there by myself, not knowing how to speak Spanish. I was going to an immersion school. And I just went down there And I remember I was thinking about it the other day. My first night there, I showed up. It was this small town near the cloud forest of Monteverde. And I showed up at like 8 o'clock that night, got off a bus. I had 2 bags. It was raining. And I was expecting my host family to be there to pick me up. And the bus leaves, everybody leaves. The town was pretty much dead. So it was like, nothing going on in the town. And I was just sitting there and no one was there to pick me up. And I was like, what the hell am I doing here? And so after a while, I finally just started walking around and I just happened to see there was like an apartment sort of near there. And a light was on, the window was open. I knocked on it. This old lady came out. She spoke no English. I spoke no Spanish. Somehow we figured out what it was. She got on the phone and got her granddaughter who actually spoke English on the phone. Turned out she had called my host family and the daughter said, okay, we're coming to get you. Just hang tight. So I'm sitting there and then this taxi cab shows up and starts grabbing my bags. And I'm like, what the hell? Do not take my bags. No, I'm waiting for somebody. Again, we couldn't speak. And finally I was like, whatever. And I just got in there and it turns out they had called a cab to come get me. And that was the start of my adventure down there. It was just sort of like, at some point you just had to just go with the flow. I was down there for about 3.5 months, learned Spanish, just met people from all over and just sort of got way out of my comfort zone and just, everything turned out okay. So it was a huge confidence builder. Again, back to the risk theme that we've been talking about, I went down there not knowing anyone and, just huge learning experience. And it's just, if you put yourself out there, you'll grow. And then other things just tend to be easier down the road. So that was a big thing I learned from that trip.
Yeah, that's awesome. That is an absolute favorite topic of mine. And it's, essentially that idea of putting yourself in uncomfortable situations to almost create that need to learn and grow. Right. And as someone who is also learning to ski, within the past couple of years, those situations in particular, right, they're uncomfortable, they're very challenging, but creating that discomfort allows you to be in the right situation and kind of have the knowledge to overcome that discomfort when it's presented not artificially, right, and it just kind of happens. And that's something that I really admire. In school, right, it looks like you, and I believe you studied industrial systems and engineering training at Georgia Tech. Did you learn anything throughout that time that, you feel like you picked up and you were able to take into your firm that maybe law school or even earlier legal work, didn't prepare you for?
Well, I've forgotten a lot of that. I'll tell people my kids are taking math now, and I've forgotten all of it. I had to take 6 calculus classes. I mean, it just went on and on and on. But industrial engineering is basically it's basically efficiency. It teaches you efficiency in systems and processes. Industrial engineers, they go on and design the flight paths for all the airlines, or they design the routes for FedEx drivers or Amazon drivers. They also design, they set up factory floors to make the process more efficient. And so, I did learn about systems and efficiencies and that sort of thing. I hope that it has helped in terms of, crafting processes around the law firm. Although it's funny, every time you get your process, you outgrow it and then it's broken and you got to do it again. So it feels like I'm just constantly building new systems.
Always getting better, right? But that is a very challenging aspect, and something that I know you've talked about in the past is almost like those career crossroads or like firm crossroads, and that balance or the difficult decision between kind of the processes that are in place, right, that maybe work fine, but aren't operating or maybe working as well as they could be, and kind of building those new systems that might create that discomfort, but long-term might be the right solution. So, are there any specific examples that you see from like a crossroads standpoint, or, things that you've just come across in your, journey as a firm owner that you think people could learn from?
Absolutely. I'll tell you where I am right now. I'm bumping into one right now. And so, so the history of my firm a little bit. So I started it about almost 8 years ago now, and it was the first 4.5 years. I call it a lifestyle firm. It was me. I had a contract attorney. Occasionally, I would have like a VA that would help, but it was easy. It's sort of, I was busy enough, but not too busy, and we could handle things. But then one day I decided to grow, and you start adding people. And then I really started doubling, tripling, quadrupling down on my marketing, business development efforts. And those are working. And so fortunately, I'm getting a lot of, new clients and things coming in. But I am doing a lot of the consults, and the intake's the wrong word, but I'll call it consults. And I just don't have time. I don't have time to do that anymore, but I'm good at it. I'm really good at it. And I know my stuff. And so, what got me here is not going to get me there. And so that's a big one that I have really been struggling with. And really over the last, I'd call it 6 weeks, it's been a huge mindset shift. And that's really, I think, what has to happen before any change comes for anybody. And so the mindset shift for me is, I've been pretty good about sort of getting out of the legal work process. But this list piece of doing the consults has been hard mentally for me, but I've finally gotten there. And it's the kind of thing where, for any lawyer out there, you hit these bottlenecks. One early one that most law firm owners hit is they're doing all the work and they're control freaks, and it's hard for them to let go and get it to other people. If you can't get that to other people, then you're going to stall out. Then I think maybe one of the next ones is sort of where I am now. It's, you got to get yourself out as much as you can of the consults, because if you don't, you're going to stall out. You can't scale it beyond you. There's only so much time. So that's where I am now. It's again, I think it sounds easy. I think maybe I intellectually had sort of known this, but actually going through it, it's a little bit different. And I think I have had the mental mindset breakthrough over the last few weeks, and I think I'm there. So now I'm on the path to sort of start to transition that, delegate that piece. So that's one example.
Yeah. It's a difficult thing, right? To almost start delegating things that you do very well, but are just not going to be that long-term process if the goal is to continue to grow and scale, right? And it's better to establish those systems early than continue to always have to work through them, which is always going to be the case, right? But make that process a bit easier when you're looking to scale. Now, one thing that we talked about and that I've seen you posting a bit about on LinkedIn is the book that you're writing. And so I'd be curious to hear a little bit more about that project and, what you're really looking to get across to people who are reading.
Sure. So, that's another thing that, it took me 2.5 years to actually get it done. It had been sort of starting and stopping on that, but we're finally there. And so the book's done. It's in the hands of, we're getting it formatted for printing. We're about mid-September now. It should come out early to mid-October 2025. So I'm really excited about that. And sort of the book's called The Law Firm Life Cycle. The sort of the premise of the book is, every law firm, or I'll say law firms go through sort of a standard evolution and a standard cycle. Not all law firms make it through all of it. But basically, you start, then you grow, and there are various stages, and eventually you may shut down. And so the book really is formatted or takes the reader through the life cycle of a law firm and talks about some of the different issues that come up at different stages of growth. So, the issues that a freshly brand new law firm face are different than a law firm that's been around for 30, 40 years. And so the things that happen early or the issues that come up early are not really relevant to what may come up later. So I wanted to take the reader through the whole cycle, so it would be a resource for every law firm owner, no matter where they are along their law firm journey.
Particularly perfect for anybody who's listening to this podcast. I know it's not out yet, but when might we expect that book to come out? And, is there anything that people can do to stay up to date on when that launch is going to happen?
Sure. So I don't have an exact date yet, but I would say by no later than October 15th, 2025, it's going to be out. If people want to stay up to date, I would follow me on LinkedIn. Come follow me there. I'm pretty active there. If you really want even better access for updates, on my LinkedIn page, there's a way to subscribe to my newsletter, my email newsletter, and I'm giving a lot of updates there, probably some special offers and some things there as well. So I'd encourage anyone out there to sign up for the newsletter. So I send a weekly email. It's short and sweet. It's not annoying, I promise. A lot of value packed into that. I get a lot of, I subscribe to a lot of things, and some are better than others, but I promise this one's pretty good and it's not annoying. So I encourage people to sign up for that.
Yeah. Well, that breaking news, right? I'm going to consider that breaking news. You heard it here first. No later than October 15th. That's a quote, right? Write that down. No later than October 15th. And LinkedIn, you're very active on LinkedIn. And when we were introduced, I realized I think we were actually connected on LinkedIn before that official introduction was made. I view LinkedIn as a very powerful tool. In previous episodes, we've had, people speak specifically on LinkedIn, Tony Albrecht episode in particular, and kind of the power of LinkedIn as a platform, especially early on when you can use that time to, go above and beyond, kind of when outside of the cap space, right? If we want to use like a sports term there. Talk to us a little bit more about that experience for you. What are your goals when it comes to that platform? What have you seen work? What maybe hasn't worked the way you thought it would?
So I'm a big believer of LinkedIn. I think it's huge. I think any professional should be on there and be active. It's very powerful. I've been active, I lose track of time, maybe 3 or 4 years now. I was an early adopter of LinkedIn. So I went back, I think I signed up within 6 months of it launching 20 something years ago, but I just thought it was an online resume. And I thought it was sort of a boring joke of a platform, to be honest. But someone found me there, reached out, said, "Hey, let's have a Zoom." And by the end of that, he had convinced me to get active on there. So I started playing with it, posting a few times a week. And I've been posting regularly ever since. And it's been really incredible platform for me and getting to know people all over the country and all over the world, frankly, just through the interactions there. And it's helped me develop new relationships, deepen relationships. I've learned a ton just from other people posting. It is really a cool place. There's a wrong way to do it, which Tony probably talked to you about. The way a lot of lawyers use it is, I'm humbled and honored to be recognized as, the bestest lawyer, blah, blah, blah. Nobody cares about that. So I would not do those kinds of posts. Tell stories. Everybody's got stories that they've experienced in their career, lessons they've learned. Those are the kinds of things that resonate with people, fun to read, interesting to read, and sort of let people know about you and your experience and humanize you as a person. So for those out there that are not active, I encourage you to get on there. If you don't have the time, you can still post once a week, but experiment with it. You'll be surprised at some of the opportunities that may come your way if you get active there.
Couldn't agree more. Could not agree more. Couple of final questions for you, kind of rapid fire. So if we do like a mini case almost, right? And you either take yourself back to kind of your break-even year for the firm, or, you put yourself in the shoes of somebody who's maybe going through their break-even year, what would you say is one clause or agreement that you would have put in place, or that you recommend people put in place then, that would save headaches down the line?
And once you start growing, I think you need, employee policies. So that would be something I'd put in place, as soon as you start hiring. That would be one right there.
Can you go into a little bit more depth about some of those policies? Anything in particular?
Well, I mean, there's a ton. And I can tell you just from representing firms that have gone through issues, employee related issues, if you have written processes and policies that you can fall back on and rely on and point to, it's going to help you, instead of saying, hey, you should have just known you shouldn't have done this, or you should have just known this is the way we do it. That's not going to help you. But if you, and these policies cover all sorts of things, from, social media policy to, computer use policy to attendance to, PTO, all the stuff. You put it in that handbook. Everybody sees it. They read it. They sign off on it. And so you've got them. And then I guess the second part of that is you need to enforce them. You can't selectively enforce them, but that is something that I think every firm needs. If it's just you, I mean, it's just you, there may be a couple things you can do. I'd say if it's just the attorney without employees, the first thing I always recommend is really tighten up your client retainer agreement, because that is your clients are a major source of risk. And you really want to tighten up that agreement, both to set expectations, but also to protect yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Something that is easy in concept, but much more difficult to do and do well. And so definitely, Jonathan able to help with that sort of thing. Two more rapid fire questions. I'm starting my law firm tomorrow, William McCreight Law Firm. What are 3 pieces of counsel that you would give to somebody about to launch a new firm off the jump? Three easy things, or 3 very important things that you would give?
So the first thing, form an entity. Every state allows it. Form an entity. Don't act as a sole proprietor. You want that liability shield. It's not going to protect you from a malpractice claim, but it can protect you from other creditors. If something goes wrong, you don't want them to go after your house. So get the entity. The other thing is, get your malpractice insurance. Just get it. I know attorneys out there, I've talked to them, that do not get a malpractice policy in place on purpose because they feel like it will put a target on their back. I think that is misguided. It's not that expensive to get it. Just get that in place. You may need it. And most of these policies will cover bar grievance defense. And so even if you just want it for that, so you don't have to, because clients sometimes are crazy. They'll come after you. And if you have insurance that'll cover that cost, that will be, well worth the spend. So those are 2 biggies. Obviously, there's a whole host of other things you need to do eventually. But if you get those 2 in place in the very beginning, you're setting yourself up from a risk management perspective on a good footing. Love
it. AI, right? And I'm sure that we could probably go into hours and hours about the conversation here, but how have you seen AI impact the ability to put some of this infrastructure in place, or utilize that as a tool when it comes to sort of creating some of these processes, handbooks, things like that? Any tips or tricks that you've seen to work well, or things that people might think might think work well in theory or in concept, but really are not going to be good enough to get the job done?
I mean, the AI stuff, it's moving so fast. I mean, every week there's something new. I think it's really incredible leverage tool for firms. I am not in the camp where it's going to replace lawyers. I've seen too many drawbacks to it, I guess. There are things that AI can do really, really well, and there are things that it just does not do well. And I'm not convinced that they're going to be able to fix that. There's some, the hallucination issue, I think, is inherent in the design. I just don't know if you'll ever be able to get rid of that. Obviously, we've all read the stories about the fake cases, and I think every lawyer should know by now to be careful on that. So on the legal research, I think it's got a long way to go. But on all the other stuff, definitely on marketing, on workflows, on all sorts of things, it's really, really powerful and really kind of amazing what it can do. And I think the firms that really adopt and adapt that stuff now are going to be leagues ahead of other firms that are not. So, there's huge rabbit hole on some of the ethics pieces and confidentiality and all that. We won't go into that, but I think everyone should be out there experimenting with it. And I'll say this too. There are a lot of firms, and I help firms with AI policies. There are some that are, I'll just call them more traditional firms. And their approach is head in the sand. We're going to forbid the use or have very limited use or just ignore it. If you have anybody in your firm under the age of 30, they're using it every day anyway. So you better put a policy in place and train people on it.
Yeah, that's a great point, right? That's absolutely a very common thing, right? The younger attorneys who are utilizing it, the older attorneys who maybe aren't as familiar with it. Sounds like, in general, the advice there is to become, familiar with it, right? Figure out where it might make sense, but don't become overly reliant on it or ignore the potential risks, right? Ethically, legally that come alongside of that. Great advice. Last question for you. Tell me about your favorite memory experience when it comes to, looks like Georgia Tech is really kind of your big fandom from a sports standpoint, but sports in general. Talk to me about like one moment that you just, you remember that stands out to you as like, wow, this is just the best memory that I have with sports.
Oh man, that's tough. I think maybe before we got on or you saw one of my recent posts. So I did. So my son is 15. I don't have much time left with him in the house. And so we are really, I've said, we're going to, I'm going to use as much time as I've got with him. So he's become a Georgia Tech fan, football fan. And by the way, I apologize to him for that all the time because we've not been very good for a long time. But this year could be a good year. We'll see. But, I took him out to Colorado to see the first game of the season out in Boulder. That was really, really cool and fun. And then last weekend, we beat Clemson, number 12. And, we were getting close. And he looked at me and said, if we win, we got to storm the field, which I've never done before. And we pulled it off there right at the end with a last-second walk-off field goal, 55-yard, by the way, career long for the guy. And so we stormed the field and, got videos and pictures. So that's one that I will cherish. Got to do that with my son.
That's a bucket list item. And, so Georgia Tech, right, football program, it'll start turning around when the law firm GC NIL money starts pouring in, right? And
they're asking. They're asking all the time, man.
I love it. You know what? I don't know if you've had a chance to listen to any of the episodes, but we like to do a fun kind of boxing themed intro here. I'll see, maybe we can get some Georgia Tech or college football kind of marching band style intro for this episode to tie it all together.
They've got a hell of a fight song, man. They've got a good fight song. You gotta find that. So
yeah, we'll absolutely find it. Jonathan, I really, really appreciate you, coming on and having the conversation. I want people to be able to reach out, learn more about you, follow you on LinkedIn or, potentially reach out if you are able to help anybody who's listening here, take a minute and kind of plug all of the things that you're working on. Tell us where we can contact you, where we can reach out, or get in touch with you, just follow you across the board in general?
Sure. So LinkedIn, come find me there. Jonathan Hawkins, I think law firm general counsel. If you do that search, you'll find me. Very active there. Please, if we're not connected, reach out. I'll accept. Our website, www.lawfirmgc.com, and Founding Partner Podcast. Give that a listen if you're interested, and a follow. And again, if you want updates on the book or just want to hear some of my weekly musings, please sign up for the email newsletter.
Yeah, awesome. And everybody who's listening to this episode should absolutely go out. If nothing else, connect with Jonathan on LinkedIn, subscribe to the newsletter. There's a lot of great information that you're putting out there, and you have a similar mindset to me, which is, give all the information that you can, right? Like, be as valuable of an asset as you can. And, whether or not somebody, works with you at any point in time, right? Like, just share that information, help everybody. And so I really always appreciate that, admire that. Jonathan, thanks again for jumping on, and really appreciate your time and all the great insights that, you've shared with the audience here.
Will, thanks for having me. This has been fun. Really appreciate it.
Awesome.